he finishes it, then we'll open the Q&A session. So I'm going, yes, for the live right now. So in the beginning, I'll just do the opening, then Dr. Manik will be doing the presentation, and then Q&A, and our own Prajwal Bajracharya, Prajwal Gurju, right? He will be giving the closing remarks, and he will and then we will end. So this is the format that we have been following. So now is the time to go on live. So I will put everybody on the mute.
Hi, everyone. Good to see you, everybody.
So today is the April the 3rd. So it's a time for the eHeritage Facebook Live. We are almost going to be live. Okay, so we are live right now. Good morning, everybody. I would like to welcome all of you, the participant in the Zoom, as well as the ones who are watching from the home on the Facebook Live. So I am Pramesh Fresta. On behalf of all Newah Organization USA chapter, I would like to welcome everybody and eHeritage. This is our own program that we have created, the platform where we will be discussing more about the heritage side, whether it is tangible or intangible. And we have our own Prajwal Gurju, who has been instrumental, yes, on this in this program. And he is the division director for the Heritage Division for our organization, All Newah Organization, USA chapter. So I'm very glad to have today Dr. Manik Bajracharya, and he's really well known what he has been doing. So he has the PhD on this. So I will just give you the short bio of him. So originally, yes, he is from Lalitpur, Nepal, but nowadays, right, he is residing in Germany with his family. So he has the PhD from Aichi Gaikuen University in Nagoya, Japan. And he has been working in Heidelberg University in Germany since 2011. And during 2012 to 2015, he has worked on the edition and translation of the Nepalika Gopal Bamchavali. This Bamchavali was published in 2015. It will be the main topic of today's talk. So today's talk, he will be based on his work. And since 2015, he has been working on the project Documenta Nepalika, which is creating a large metadata repository of Nepalese document and making digital editions and publication of selected documents. So I'm very pleased to welcome Dr. Manik Bajracharya.
Thank you very much. Namaste, everyone. Jojolappa. Let me share my screen. Can I?
Sure, please go ahead.
So first of all, thank you, World Newah Organization USA. And thank you to Prameshji and my guru, Prajwal Ratna Bajracharya, for giving me this opportunity. My talk today is entitled On the 19th Century Chronicle of Nepal, but I will go a bit beyond this, or I would like to start with the very introduction to Nepalese Bamchavali first, because I think some of the audiences we have, some of the friends we have here, probably are uh, not so acquainted with this form of history writing from Nepal. So this is an overview of how my talk will go today. I will give a short introduction to traditional historical writings in Nepal, its characteristics, some discussion on typology, and I will introduce you some selected published and unpublished Nepalese chronicles. And depending on how much time remains, I go a bit more into the introduction of the book that I wrote with Professor Axel Michaels in 2015 uh, on one of the Bamchavalis of 19th century. So before we go further, I want to clarify a thing here, that I use the term traditional history writing or historical writing um, to mention that it is the pre-modern historical texts from Nepal, and it excludes the modern historiography. And I should say that of all the countries in South Asia, Nepal probably has one of the biggest corpus of traditional historical writings or chronicles preserved. These writings are generally known as Vamshavalis, although I'll show you later that there are various types of traditional history writings in Nepal, and not all of them are called Vamshavalis. However, for the simplicity, let us use the term Vamshavali or chronicle to denote generic name as a generic name for the traditional history writings. To give you an idea of the corpus of Nepalese chronicles, the Nepal German Manuscript Preservation Project, I guess most of you might have heard of this. There was a joint project between Nepalese government and German government starting from 1970s for 30 years for the preservation of manuscripts and epigraphic documents mostly. And it did a lot of microfilming. About 200,000 manuscripts were microfilmed. And if there is a catalog for this project available, and it lists in my preliminary source, it lists at least 110 Vamshavali manuscripts. And there is one private archive called Asa Safukuti in Kathmandu. I made a quick search and I found at least 15 chronicles there. And at the Hodgson collection in the British Library, which is also called India Office Library, this section where Hodgson collection is housed, it has 65 titles under chronicles. So if we add to this Vamshavalis that are in collection of private individuals, monasteries, gutis in Nepal, and if we also include the university libraries, the texts in the university libraries around the world, this might number another 100. So the corpus is really big for this genre of historiographical text. And I would like to mention one name here, Yogesh Raj Mishra. He wrote an article called Towards a Cache Typology of Historiography, Reading Historical Texts from South Asia. I mentioned this article because I find his argument in this quite remarkable. He discusses in this article the classification of historical narratives proposed by one German historian called Jörn Rusen and another American historian, Hayden White. He criticizes that both the typologies described by these authors belong to narrow Anglo-European tradition. And then he goes on to describe South Asian historical texts, including Bamchavalis, Chhata texts, which we will discuss later on, which also includes Ghatanabalis, and we will, of course, discuss all these terms later on. What is interesting is he argues that the texts, these kind of Nepalese historiographical texts, should be considered as histories, not just as the sources of history. What many of the historians so far have been telling, because there is a, especially this Eurocentric idea, which is still there, is that countries like Nepal, India, and China didn't create historiography. There is no proper history writing in these countries, and this argument, even though it is old, is still there. But of course, there are many scholars who deny it, who recognize the value of historical writing in Nepal. So I also take the stand to this argument and suggest that the traditional historical texts in Nepal should be treated as a distinct form of historiography, not just as the sources of history, and their scientific value must be recognized. Let me go on. Let's start with what is a Vamshavali? What is a chronicle? I mean, it's a general introduction also, not just for Nepalese Vamshavali. Yeah? The word Vamshavali is a Sanskrit term. It literally means genealogy. And whose genealogy? Mostly these are the genealogy of kings, or it can be, in several cases, genealogy of a clan or some families. Also, Vamshavalis are a narration of historical and legendary events. Yeah? And in the case of Nepalese Vamshavalis, what we find more prominently are the events of donations, patronage to the monuments, also description of rituals and important festivals also. Also, Vamshavalis are also the story of origin of places and also monuments. For example, Swami Purana, which is a story of the origin of the Kathmandu Valley itself. Vamshavalis are also reports of deeds of kings, deities, sages, sadhus, monks, bhikshus, bodhisattvas, and some heroes. Let us go into some characteristics of Nepalese Vamshavali writings. I have to mention the word itihasa here, which literally means itihasa. So indeed it was. It happened so. So what it means is the Vamshavalis are mostly a retelling, and they are not the first-hand experience. So this is against the emphasis of dominance of first-hand experiential truth in Western historiography, so to say. So retelling is emphasized. And a Bamchavali, especially the bigger ones, the comprehensive ones, are compiled from various sources. The family of compilers of Bamchavali, they have they generally compile bits and pieces of different sources of genealogies to create a bigger comprehensive volume of Vamshavalis. So in a way, we can say that chronicles are generally combining of several genealogical lists. So we can, when we read a Vamshavali, some Vamshavalis, we can recognize the changing of styles within the text. So that gives us the idea that they have been compiled from different sources. Um, in a Vamshavali, in most cases, the writers are not known. The scribes are, the authors are generally not known. Um, and even though even though the Vamshavali itself may not have scribes or authors written, but we generally know who writes them. So generally, they are the Buddhist and Hindu priests, mostly Newahs, such as Rajopadhyayas, Vajracharyas, Karmacharyas, Joshis, or they can be merchants also. Sometimes we have Vamshavalis written by merchant families or Vaidyas, or it can be from different classes. Any class of people can write genealogies. And the other peculiarity of Vamshavalis are that the narrators are omnipresent. That means that the narrators are involved. They put their point of view. For example, they describe a dream of a king, yeah, and sometimes they put their opinion also. And what is interesting in Vamshavalis is there is absence of skepticism or doubt. Mm. There are many events that might be mythological or historically doubtful, but the narrator himself never puts skepticism into what is being written. And the Vamshavali narratives are also plots. That means they are focused on particular landscape. For example, most of the Nepalese Vamshavalis are focused in Kathmandu Valley, or it can be also focused on certain temple or certain deity also. So the what I mean to say is that generally the Vamshavalis have regional scopes or very limited scope. So for that matter, an Vamshavali can be also called indigenous form of history or an indigenous form of historiography. Another interesting thing is that the Nepalese Vamshavali please have a cyclical concept of time. I'm sure all of you know this. You know, the time is divided into four yugas, and most of these comprehensive Vamshavalis they begin with the Satya Yuga and the first of these four yugas, and generally proceed to the current yuga called Kali. Um, and also, what is interesting is that in Vamshavalis we see that in the narratives of the in the earliest narratives, the agency of human and agency of divine are close, and as the time passes, the closeness of human agency and divine agency become farther and farther. Um, yes, and the last specialty I want to mention is that the Nepalese Bamchavalis are mm, not meant to be strictly historiographical texts, because their message, in most cases, is of the soteriological. So um, instead of just being a mundane text, Vamshavalis try to uh, fill themselves with divine agency and teaching of spirituality. So religious motivation is important, emancipation is important, and ethics is important. So these are the characteristics of Nepali Vamshavali. I'm sure the Indian Vamshavali is not very different than this. If you have anything to add onto this or suggestion, please let me know later. Okay, let's go into the brief typology of Nepali Vamshavali. In this slide here, I've tried to categorize Nepali Vamshavalis according to temporal factor, according to the time period when they are prepared. So my dividing line is 19th century. So we have Vamshavalis that are pre-19th century, and we have a plethora of Vamshavalis, also known as Bhasha Vamshavalis, that proliferated in 19th century. So what are the first kind? The pre 19th century Vamshavalis are also genealogies. And the first Vamshavali so far in Nepal, which is very well known, is Gopal Raj Bamchavali, which was compiled in late 14th century during the time of Jayasthiti Malla. And also we have before 19th century, and I have to also mention that most of the Vamshavalis prepared before 19th century are either Newari, Nepal Bhasha, or Sanskrit. I would say and the Nepal Bhasha Vamshavalis might be more, but this is still a topic of study. The other kind of Vamshavalis are the genealogy of certain clan and families, or also pre-19th century. And then we have a big amount of texts, generally known as Katanavalis, which means Katanavali literally means the garland of events. So they are the reports of events collected in families. And also these Katanavalis can be related to certain deity or certain temple or a certain guti also. Then we have one typology, one type of historiographical text called Chata. It's a Newari term, medieval term. I'm not very sure about the etymology of this term yet. I asked once with Professor Kashinath Tamot about this term, and his idea was it must have come from Chayata. So why this happened, why something happened. But it could also mean what happened, what kind of event happened. So if in the article I mentioned of Yogesh Raj, he places within the within the typology of charta, different other historiographical writings such as Ghatnavalis, the garland of events, Ghatana Bibarana, report of events, Aitihasika Tipota, which means historical notes, Dharapau, which means a list of events or diaries. And these charter texts are mostly, as I told, written in Sanskrit or Nepal Bhasha. And there's a tradition, also Yogesh Raj has mentioned that it is called Chata Soe or Chai Soe. Apparently, these terms are used for used when people have to consult to these historiographical texts, consult to these historical texts to know what happened in the past. For example, in the case of calamities, when people have to know how it was dealt with in the past, then this process apparently was called chata soy, chai soy, to see what happened, to look for why it happened, or to look for what happened in the past. But all of these need more study. You see, apart from Gopal Raj Bamchavali and the Keshar Library Bamchavali, um, there is almost no publication yet from this section of this part of historical text. So most of the charter texts are unknown, even though there are hundreds of them. And then we have another pre-19th century historical text called Puranas or Mahatmyas. Puranas such as Swayambhu Purana, uh, or Mahatmyas, there who are glorification of certain places, the spatial glorification text. We have Nepal Mahatmya, for example, and these are in Sanskrit. So coming to 19th century, if we look at what is available in terms of printed Bamshavalis now, we have Gopal Raj Bamchavali, which was compiled in the late 14th century. Then suddenly we have the Bamshavalis published, the published Bamshavalis compiled in 19th century and after only. So there's a dark period of research between end of 14th century and 19th century. So for all of you who are interested in study of this form of historiography, it's a hot topic, I would say. So about the 19th century Bamshavalis, we have, they are called Vasha Bamshavali. We even have 2-volume Bamshavali published by National Library of Nepal, and they are entitled Bhasha Bamshavali, literally. And the reason why it is called Bhasha Bamshavali is because they are written in the language of people. In this case, the Nepali people, the Nepali language. And one may ask, why there is a sudden proliferation of genealogical texts in 19th century. In our research, we have found that most of these texts are there because they are commissioned either by colonial interest The British colonial officials were interested in Nepalese past, and also many of them were commissioned by the palace, which means the Shah Palace. The Prithviraj Shah conquered Kathmandu Valley in 1769. So they needed to gain legitimacy for their ruling, and I guess through this kind of genealogical texts, Vamshavalis, they could link themselves to the glorious past of the valley or of the center. Mm. So that is why there are so many Vamshavalis in the 19th century. And these genealogies are not only of Shahas. They are of Rana rulers and other high caste clans also. We find a lot of them. Okay, I'd like to introduce you some of the published and then unpublished Vamshavalis. I have not chosen them because of certain category. I've just chosen them because I thought they are interesting or important, because there are many, and due to the time constraint, I can't introduce you all of this. So the first is I told you about already, Gopal Raj Bamchavali. This was edited by Bajracharya and translated in the English by Kamal Prakash Malla. In 1985, it was published in Wiesbaden, Germany. But it was published under the umbrella of Nepal Research Center, which is not there anymore in Kathmandu. The original language of this Vamshavali is Sanskrit and the old Nepal Bhasha, because the original text is from 14th century. And the manuscript is the manuscript which they have edited and translated is currently archived in National Archives, Nepal. And it was also microfilmed by this Nepal German Manuscript Preservation Project under the real number B1823. The manuscript itself has 47 folios, but the first 16 folios are missing. So why this manuscript is called Gopala Raj Bamchavali? Gopala, as you know, is one of the earliest rulers in Nepal. And when Cecil Bendal first found this manuscript in Bir Library, or the fragments of this manuscript in Bir Library, he must have named it because it started with the Gopal dynasty. So that's why he named this Gopal Raj Bamchavali. And also this manuscript is also called as Bendal Bamchavali by some scholars. But if you look into the manuscript itself, Bamchavali itself, it calls itself Bhuta Britanta, which means accounts of the past. This is also one of the most widely used Vamshavalis of Nepal, because it's translated into English by Daniel Wright, published in 1877 by Cambridge University Press. Many scholars called it Wright's Chronicle. Actually, Wright didn't translate it, he only introduced it. And this is the very Bamchavali we read translated in 2015. not just retranslated. We have also we also did the edition of the text. So who is this Daniel Wright? Daniel Wright was a surgeon, a doctor at the British Residency in Kathmandu from 1866 to 1876. And this the manuscript that was used for this translation was from Cambridge University. Currently, it is archived as Manuscript Additional 1952. And as the cover of the book says, the book was translated, the Vamshavali was translated by certain Munshi Shivashankar, who was the Munshi of Munshi are the professional translators, so to say. A Munshi of the residency in Kathmandu, and also Pandit Gunananda, who is a Shakya Pandit from Okubahal, who was a Shakya Pandit from Okubahal. And the original manuscript is in Nepali. So this is the Bhasha Vamshavali I mentioned you about. It was published in Bikram Sambat 2020 and 2023, published as 2 volumes. The first volume is by Nayanath Paudel, edited by Nayanath Paudel. The second by Devi Prasad Lamsal. Both are in Nepali language. And these editions are based on manuscript number 7380 from Nepal Rashtriya Pustakalaya, Nepal National Library, and another manuscript number 332 from Bir Pustakalaya, which is also known as Darbar Library. The third one I've chosen here is by Yogi Narahari Nath. This is a very late Vamshavali. It was compiled only after the earthquake of 1934. And this is, even though it is called Vamshavali, but instead of being focused on genealogy, this is Vamshavali of places. So it's a spatial Vamshavali, contains narratives of various deities and various sites of the Kathmandu Valley. This is also originally in Nepali. And the manuscript for this Vamshavali, this edition, apparently came from a household from Lagantol in Kathmandu. So the last published Vamshavali that I want to introduce was translated in the journal SINAS, Center for Nepalese and Asian Studies at Tribhuvan University by Kamal Prakash Malla. This article, actually, this is a long article, also contains the facsimile of the original manuscript. The manuscript is now archived also in National Archive currently under the microfilm number A31910. The original language is in Sanskrit. And a fragment of this Vamshavali was first found by Luciano Petek in Kesar Library. So that's why he named it Kesar Vamshavali, KV. But Kamal Prakash Malla found a complete version of this later on, and he published there in this article. So this is also a short but important Vamshavali. Let me introduce you quickly introduce you some published Vamshavali. I think the time is running out. Sorry, this is also one of the published Vamshavalis by Bikramjit Hasrat. I chose this because This book is based on a original manuscript written in a Bamchavali written by Brian Houghton Hodgson in the beginning of 19th century. And the manuscript, his draft copy is housed at the India Office Library in the British Library, London. And Hasrat seemed to have literally put the copy as the book without talking much about the manuscript itself. So I find this quite interesting, and I will show you the facsimile of the original, the handwriting of Hodgson later. Let's look at some of the unpublished Vamshavalis. The first one I choose is, I think, one of the most important newer Vamshavalis. Newer, I mean, by newer, I mean the 19th century Vamshavali. This is one of the earliest 19th century Vamshavali written in Nepali. The Vamshavali itself calls itself Raja Upakhyan. That means stories of the kings. It is archived at the Sylvan Levy collection at the Instituts d'Orient de Collège du Français, Collège de Français. I'm sorry for my pronunciation. Under the manuscript number SL8B7. It has 85 folios and 9 lines per page. It is dated. It has a colophon. The writer is known. It is dated to 1834 CE, 1891 Bikram era. And the writer of the manuscript is someone called Siddhi Narayan Dwijavara, which means a Brahmin, a Newah Brahmin, from Pashupati area, Devapattana. And the colophon says that Siddhi Narayana prepared this Vamshavali for Munshi Lakshmi Dasa, who we know him. He was the Mir Munshi, the main Munshi of the Nepalese palace, and he was a very powerful person and was in office for 55 decades, 50 years, starting from Bhimsen Thapa's period until Janga Bahadur's period. So that means it was a commission from the palace, and the manuscript was handed over to Lakshmidas Pradhan. And we know some history of this manuscript, that this manuscript went to the Rana Palace, and Sylvan Levy was presented with this manuscript later on by Dev Shamsher Rana. So that's why, that's how it came into Sylvan Levy collection in Paris now. And Levy's book, Law Nepal, the 3-volume book of Sylvan Levy, Law Nepal, is largely based on this manuscript. But the manuscript itself has never been edited. There is no edition available yet, and there is no translation available yet. So this would be a very important manuscript to work if someone is interested. The second manuscript I found is from the Hodgson archive again, from the Hodgson collection at the British Library, archived under volume 52 in the archive. It has 52 folios, but the first 6 folios are missing. And the last incident reported, it doesn't have a colophon, so we don't know when it was actually composed. But we know from the last incident reported, uh, which is an earthquake of 1833. So we can presume that the manuscript was finished in 1833 during the time of King Rajendra. It is in Nepali language, and the manuscript is written in different kinds of paper, and so sometimes some pages have 22 lines per page, others have up to 55 lines. And our assumption is that this manuscript was compiled in Patan in the family of Pandit Amritananda Shakya, Amritananda Bandya, uh, at Okubaha. So this one I wanted to show you as an example of how the medieval Katanabalis looked like. This manuscript is in a private ownership. It has 55 folios, and it contains pure report of incidents, pure report of events, no legends, no stories, just a list of incidents. The first incident reported here is in Nepal, Samvat 767, which is 1647, and it reports of an image of Bhagavati stolen from the palace. And the last event is 1690, from 1690. So these kind of manuscripts are can be found in hundreds of numbers, and there are very few of them have been worked. This one is from also from Hodgson collection in the British Library, London. This is in Sanskrit, also a Katanavali. But what is interesting is the first paragraph here is kind of colophon. And it says that it was composed for Hodgson. His name is written as Hadasena by Amritananda Bandya. And interestingly, he says Hodgson is a Buddhist. It says Hodgson is a Tri Ratna Bhakta, a follower of Sri James. So this is one example of how the colonial officials were interested in the Nepalese past, and this is one of the commissioned text. So this is the facsimile of Hodgson's translation of Nepalese Bamchavali into English that I talked to you about. It has a total of 381 folios divided in three book-bound volumes. It is archived at volume 16 and 17 in Hodgson collection. And the book is titled Sacred Legends and Bamchavalis of Nepal proper, or the Great Valley. Apart from Hasrat's publication, I think very few people have studied it, and it deserves attention, I would say. Okay, the last one I want to show you, this might be interesting for some scholars. This is a Persian translation of Swami Purana. very few people have realized that there is a Persian translation of Nepalese historiographical text, and it would be interesting if someone finds out more about this uh, in the future. Okay, I'm sorry. Is there any time left still, Promisji?
You can still continue if you want. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let me only briefly introduce the book that we published. So we have named this 3-volume publication, which came out in the in the end of 2015. We named it Nepalika Bhupa Vamshavali after the name of the manuscript, which is mentioned at the beginning of the manuscript itself. The first volume, the first and second volume was done by me and Professor Axel Michaels, and the third volume with map and historical illustrations was prepared by Niels Gucho. The the first volume has an introduction and translation, an annotated translation of the whole manuscript. The second volume has an annotated edition of the text in Nepali, in Devanagari actually. And the third volume has several relevant maps of the stories, of the incidents, of the events that are described in the Vamshavali. And also it is accompanied by several illustrations and drawings that were done during 19th century by different artists, different Nepali artists such as Rajman Chitrakar, and by colonial artists such as Oldfield, Henry Oldfield, and so on. And many of these drawings have been published for the first time. So for the people interested in art history, the third volume might be particularly interesting. We have used 5 manuscripts to prepare the edition of the text. So the original text that we use is Nepalika Bhupa Vamshavali, which is, as I told, a book, a manuscript archived at Cambridge University Library, with manuscript number additional 1952. And this is how it looks. This is the first page. It is quite a big Vamshavali. It has 184 folios with 9 lines per page. The language is Nepali. The scribe is not mentioned, but we know that it was compiled in the family of Pandit Amritananda. I think it's the generation after Amritananda when it was compiled. We have the manuscript has several additional notes in the margins by second hand. The latest event described in Vamshavali is offering of the copper roof to Pashupati in 1838. So the Vamshavali doesn't itself have any colophon, so no scribe is mentioned. No date is mentioned of the compilation, but from the last event mentioned, we can assume that it was probably compiled in 1838. Also, we know a bit of the history of the manuscript. We know that the manuscript was in possession of Professor Edward Biles Cowell. He was the first professor of Sanskrit at the Cambridge University. And we also know that when Daniel Wright translated this manuscript was borrowed to him by Professor Cowell. And later on, he donated this, Cowell donated this manuscript to the Cambridge University Library. So apart from this, we used 4 other manuscripts for comparison for the edition. The edition is not actually a critical edition, but it's annotated with various parallels. Whenever we can find the places where the parallel can be created. Parallels could be connected with different manuscripts. So I'll just briefly tell you, we use this Buddhist Bamchavali from British Library, volume 52, and 2 manuscripts from National Archives, A319-2 and A319-5. They were pretty much in line with the Bamchavali we chose, the main Bamchavali we chose. So it was possible to create a kind of stemata, genealogical relationship of the text between those. We also chose this Paris Bamchavali, Raja Upakhyana, from the Sylvan Levy collection, even though it is not from the same genre of text, but nonetheless, it was useful for comparative purposes. And the manuscript itself, we divided it into 21 chapters. The chapters from 1 to 8 belongs to legendary period, or the period before the current Yuga, and the current Kali Yuga began. And from chapter 9 onward is somehow historical period. I think I will stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Manik.
Thank
So could you just stop sharing, please? So thank you so much, Dr. Manik. So I would like to open the QA session. So the people who are present here in Zoom, if you have any question, let us know. Then yes, we can just take a question. And anybody as the people who are in the Facebook Live, if you have any question, you can just send us on the comment box.
Also, Manik, could you take off a sharing screen so we can see?
Stop sharing screen.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody have any questions? Yeah. Please ask to the Manik. Personally.
Nobody asking. May I ask one question to Manik? So, when we talk about Bhasha Bamchavali, these all are written only 19th century, and we encounter this Sakka Sambat in this Bhasha Bamchavali in many ways. Sakka Sambat. What exactly it is? Many people doubt about this Sakka Sambat. What does it mean? And
the Sakka era, you mean? And
one thing I want to relate to Bajracharya. So in these 19th century chronicles, what we see is Vikramaditya is glorified,
Yes, yes.
and even this Dipankara Buddha is head is called Vikramaditya himself.
Yes, yeah, Vikramaditya's head. Yeah.
How this come that his story is this kind of illusion?
Yeah,
This,
I mean, it's hard to say the source of these kind of stories, you know, because these stories are must have been floating for a long time, and you see, it's not only in one Bamchavali we find this story, of Vikramaditya's head, you know. So this we exactly don't know when it began. Uh, yeah, I mean that's the problem with Bamchavali. We can't justify everything what the Bamchavali say. We can't plainly justify, but nevertheless, these stories are still important
right.
to understand from what is missing in the objective history, right?
And about this Saka era and the Bikram era, can you tell something from the realities about
The
this
use of Shaka era in Nepal, you mean?
Saka era, Bikram era? When did this started in Nepal? Before this Pasabangsa,
Um,
we didn't have real historical evidence about Bikram era used in our chronicles or stone inscription.
that we don't know, but I think for Saka era we have. I can't remember exactly the name of the king, but there is mention in Bamchavali that this king started using Shaka era in Nepal. But if you are interested, I can find it.
Kaligata era.
I'm sorry. Kaligata era is kind of ritual.
Saka is, of course, used in the past in
Yeah,
all
yeah.
those
Yes.
inscriptions.
Saka starts in 73 of AD, right?
Right.
Um, um, the Kaligata era, I think, was mostly used for rituals. When before beginning of the ritual, the priest has to make a sankalpa, yeah? the declaration of the intention of the ritual. And while doing the sankalpa, the priest mostly uses Kaligata era for that. So I would say Kaligata era was probably mostly used for ritual purposes. We find that in many of the sankalpas. There is a text called Sankalpa Ratnavali. I haven't read it all myself, a garland of sankalpas, different kinds of sankalpas. And if we read that, maybe you might get your answer.
Is there any dividing line when in Nepal people began to use this Kaligata Sambata? In the past, it was not prevalent in all those inscriptions found during Lichavi time.
Yeah, no. I think in Gopal Vamshavali we don't find Kaligata era. Yeah? No, not there. But I'm not. I can't answer you when it exactly started being used in the Vamshavalis, right?
Thank you.
So if we have any more question from the participants
It doesn't
here,
have to be any suggestion is also welcome, please.
I think Miranda Shaw.
Yes, so I just had a question about the answer to the last question, because were you saying that some part of Vamshali literature is integrated into Sankalpas?
No,
Or-
no, I didn't mean that.
So what,
Uh,
okay.
I just wanted to say the Kaligata era is used particularly in Sankalpas,
Okay,
for ritual purposes, for ritualistic
Right.
purpose. Yeah.
all right, because I read one, I'm trying to remember what Sankalpa that integrated the entire history of the site. And maybe it wasn't
Right.
exactly Sankalpa, but it kind of came after that. So I wondered if you
Yeah.
were.
Yeah, yes. The Sankalpas are quite important. The priest has to relate the purpose of the ritual to the spatial aspect also. No?
Mhm.
So generally, it starts with what year, what day is today, and where you are located, and then why this ritual is being performed today. So all these have to be declared, before the ritual actually starts.
And it, so it can incorporate some history of that site, like this, whatever.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, Miranda, go ahead.
Thank you. So I understood, Manik, Dr. Bajracharya, that previously you were very interested in ritual processes or ritual texts.
Right.
I'm wondering, have you kind of gone over into the Vamshavali, or is this, I mean, or is this like a side, or is that also that other research ongoing?
No, I'm still interested in ritual studies. My PhD was on Saptavidhanuttara ritual. Um, and actually, I still want to come back to this topic. But my current job is about the documents and the historiographical materials.
Mhm.
Yeah, it has been a kind of shift from what I was doing in the past. Since 2009, I'm into Vamshavali and the documents.
Okay. So it sounds like it has engaged you very much, though.
Yes.
But you might want to return to ritual. I mean, I was eagerly awaiting your discoveries.
Yeah, I should publish it. And also, I have a book in preparation with my professor Musashi Tachikawa.
Yes.
Yeah, and um, it should come out soon on the Newah Buddhist iconography.
All right. I
Yeah.
hope you'll let us all know the minute it's published.
Yeah, I will, of
All
course.
right. Thank you.
I'm quite fond of your books, by the way. I consulted your books a lot for my studies.
Oh, thank you.
Great. So I think the Linda has any question?
Thank you so much,
Namaste.
Dr. Bunny. It was really wonderful to hear this presentation and learn about some of the newer publications. I feel like I've been in a dark hole for about 10 years now. But now that I'm retired, I'm just so happy to start being able to see some of these things and get back to it. I was struck because just recently I've been looking at the Salopyakan text and the song for it from Harsiddhi.
Mm.
I realized when back in 2012, I actually was able to photograph the Salopyakan book. But I realized that the song that they sing about Salopyakan, at least in some of the verses, are like reciting almost at stone inscriptions, or it has a Vamsavali nature to it. And I was wondering if you are also looking at the some of the Pyakan texts or text linked to Pyakan for this Vamsavali style of presentation of history, because I feel like they really would contribute a lot to that. And I'm very excited about that. And Sanku also, I know Gopal, you have that for the Devi Pyakan, right? And
Yes, I could get copy of Devi Pyakan,
yeah.
Peter Puja, Ganesh Puja.
Mhm.
Did you you collect the narratives itself, or
No, handwritten text.
okay?
in
But
Nepal.
the oral transmission is it related? Is there a relation between the text and the oral presentation?
Yeah, for instance, Devi Pyakan text, they used to train the Devi dancers.
Mhm.
That occasionally happens, not every year or 12 years like that, but occasionally happens. And similarly, Pita Puja,
Mhm.
this takes place once in a while when they want. So during Pita Puja, they use that text, where to go, which Pita the first one, second one, like this, all sort of things, and
Yeah.
ingredients they need. These are the things.
And that's in the Gompyakan too, in Patan, and for Jalapyakan too, there's some connections.
Actually, several years ago, I made an edition of the text from Gompyakan.
Oh, did you? I didn't know.
Yes, I was able to photograph the manuscript of the singing, but mostly they are like Charya songs.
Mhm.
But I have the transliteration if you are interested on them. I could send it to you.
I would love to see that.
Yes, yeah. But this Salapyakan, this transmission,
First time I heard.
very interesting.
I was listening Jinda's lecture from 2 days ago, the whole Newah day.
Uh-huh.
When you mentioned Salapyakan, kind of surprising.
Yeah, this I've never seen this Salapyakan itself. So I also believe that part of the Bamchavalis were oral tradition, no,
That's
before
right. Yeah.
written
Mhm.
down. Yeah, so I'm sure this oral tradition must be still going on in some way. But I will try to witness the Salapyakan one day myself.
I just have a short excerpt from it that they performed during Dasai. I have the video of that, but the full version of it is much more elaborate, and it refers to Tibetans coming down to see things.
And the language is Newari, or
Yes, yeah.
okay.
I just, my photographs from 2012 were locked somehow on my computer. And I just the other day after my presentation was able to unlock them and get back to looking at them. And thank goodness they're still available to look at. But what I'll probably do is try to upload those somewhere. If you're interested, you could look
Yeah.
at the text. It's,
Okay.
I was just, yeah, it's an interesting thing. I just find that this connection between performing traditions and oral traditions and then the Vamsavalis is a
Yeah.
very important thing to look at.
Maybe
Yeah.
Linda, it's fully possible for you to do the presentation next month. Saturday, which will be great. So to, even like a jalapeno, a little bit span it. Like last time you just have a short, we just have a 10-minute. So it's
Yeah,
for 1 hour. So,
Great cut up.
I'll have to see if it would work for next month. It might, yeah. It might work out.
So-
When I worked on the Outer City or Jalapeno, I had to consult a lot of these Vamsavalis that you mentioned. And that was a very interesting thing to kind of look at, do a concordance of where they all were on the map. And that got published in this souvenir edition that in Hadar Siddhi. I don't think it's widely available at all, but I'm wondering if I should put it up somewhere and make a PDF available. Gautam Bajracharya also published a very nice thing in this volume. It's called Dabu. I don't know. It looks like this. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe what I'll do is, do you put things up on the Newah organization website, or do you think academia, or
Maybe the dance model website, or
Happy to, yeah,
I don't know.
Nitya Mandal Mahabhyar web page too. So I'm happy to upload or whatever's needed. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll be great. Yeah, so it'll be great. So next month will be the May 1st. So if you want, let me, yeah. And the promise is the in charge, promise is the coordinator. So we'll keep in touch with you.
okay. Thank you so much, Manik. It's
Great.
really interesting.
Linda, can I get your email address?
Sure.
Yeah, I'll send you the transliteration of the text from
Sure.
Gopal.
Yeah, you can just send that chat box that we have, so that we can communicate.
Your sound was not clear.
Promise you, your sound is.
Yeah, we have chat box here. Maybe it's there so that you're
Nothing is clear.
Yeah, promise.
What happened? Suddenly.
That's right.
Thank you. I got it.
Okay, good.
Please. And the last time, Tor was also talking about Nasadio. Also, that will be interesting for coming episodes, I assume.
Oh, I'm sure he would love to
He
do.
was very enthusiastic talking, but he was caught up. Daya didn't want him to make it long.
I know. That was a long day.
Yeah, we have a 3 hours, so it's even goes 3 hours.
Yeah, the program was long. Yeah, indeed. Yeah. No, I was not participating on the same day. We watched later on YouTube.
Good.
And also, Mirinda, also, I want you to present some things in this platform too. So I don't know, whenever, however, so you can do a Charya dance, or you can do also, feminine Buddhist goddesses in Nepal. So your book coming out so it'll be great to have you here as well. So
Thank you, Prashant.
yeah,
We'll discuss that.
okay. So we can make it this happen. That will be great. Okay, any other questions that we have? So